Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to cover the whole entire market in terms of Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, including the economic calendar. If you're a new viewer to this channel, I highly recommend you to double check my latest videos on X and YouTube, so that way you can get the most latest up-to-date videos. I do post these daily. First, before I get into the price points in terms of resistance and support, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. So for tomorrow, it's pretty much a light day, Wednesday, June 26th at 10 a.m. We have new home sales, but the most important thing for this week is the PCE inflation numbers that are coming out. The Fed highly regards these inflation numbers as more accurate versus CPI and PPI numbers. And the reason why this is important is if inflation comes in better than expected, so lower, then it's more likely that the Fed could be cutting interest rates this year, at least the one time that is expected from the market. And if it comes in higher than expected, so inflation is not improving, then it's less likely that the Fed will cut the interest rates one time this year. So that is important. Be on the lookout for that. Now, in terms of movements for the market, I'm going to go over the S&P 500 first, and then the Nasdaq, and then Dow Jones. So for the Nasdaq and S&P 500, short term, within let's say tomorrow early morning part of the day, it seems like it could be dipping but then recovering by the end of the day based off the MACD lines. And then in terms of within the later on in the week, maybe early next week, it looks like we're going to be returning back to the lower baselines. So it seems like overall for the Nasdaq and S&P and a little bit of the Dow Jones, it seems like they're going to be pulling back to the baselines. I'm going to go over those levels, but it could change because the inflation numbers are coming out by the end of next week. So if the inflation numbers, end of this week, if inflation numbers come in better than expected, then the MACD lines will be overturned, and those numbers will carry the market to the upside. Plus we have mega caps, and the mega caps, for example, Nvidia today went up 7%. So those things could pull the market regardless of what the MACD lines are showing, right? And MACD lines dictate if it's a bearish or bullish movement for the market we're in. Now, for the most part, the baseline, what I'm looking at is right about here. It's give or take about $531 and some change. There is support at the 560 and the 529, but the reason why I'm regarding this as a baseline is we've seen resistance multiple touch points right about here. I'll try to zoom in as much as I can. So you can see one little uptick right here. Pretty much a flatline consolidation right about here, resistance consolidation here, resistance consolidation, a little bit of resistance right here too on the way down, and then we've seen support right about here. And then maybe you could regard this sideways thing a little bit here too much, but I wouldn't really regard it that much. But we've seen resistance and support, and that's again about 531 and some change. Plus on the way down, we do have support which consolidates around here with the moving average at the 541. So basically I'm trying to cover the downside too at the same time. So if we were to come down tomorrow, like I stated earlier, tomorrow in the beginning of the day could be a down day and then recover by the end of the day, because it's kind of showing that small dip and then going back up to the upside a little bit. So about 541 we'll see support based off the moving average, and then the next moving average / consolidation phase right about here, we see support about the 534, almost 535 and some change, or 535, but 534 and some change as support. And then essentially we've trickled down to the 531 and some change. So those are the levels that we're looking at for support. Is there support like in between? Yeah, we could see support at the 537 and some change based off this, but this is the only data point that I see for it, so I wouldn't really rely on that. Now to the upside resistance, we have resistance at the $545 and some change. And then right about here, the reason why I'm considering this, I'll show it. Actually, I'll zoom in. Horizontally, you could kind of see like consolidating resistance or support, and then resistance right about here and a little bit of a tick right there. So that's pretty much about $546 and some change. Right now we're at $544 and some change, but that would be resistance. And then the next level, because we could pass that, it's pretty close to where we're at. We're looking at $548 and some change. And then basically after that, it's the all-time high that we had recently, which was on give or take June 20th, 2024, and that is 550 and some change. So that would be upside. I do not think we're going to see this upward trend resistance line that has about 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 touch points. I don't think we'll see that pretty soon. I don't think so. If we do, I'll post it on X and YouTube on the community posts if we do see it. Now for this one, for the QQQ / ETF for Nasdaq, I'm just going to show the 5-year chart because we're getting close to the potential support bounce off. We have an upward trend resistance line dating back since 2010, multiple touch points. You can see right over here all the way through 2010. Then we broke through in 2020 to 2022, bounced off as support right about here. And then as recently we came back underneath it, and then we got knocked down by it, so couldn't pass it. And then right about here, when I zoom in, you'll see we had difficulty potentially passing and consolidating a little bit, and then just spiked up through past it and broke through. Now, for the baseline, the S&P 500 / SPY, it was about 531 and some change. For this one, I think the baseline, in my opinion, would be with this upward trend. So this line right here is the upward trend resistance line dating back since 2010. And I think either it's going to be this one or this line, but let's just say it's this line for now. It's about $471 and some change. For the time, like the longer we take, the higher the low will be, if that makes sense. So right now we're at $479.38. Maybe that baseline might be on the low side, but in my opinion, I think we're going to see 471 for sure and some change at some point. So right now, in terms of current support levels to the downside, given that we're at 479 and some change, the first level of support, we could be bouncing off the moving average, which is about 478 and some change. And then the next level would be about with the moving average, which kind of coincides with these touch points right about here as support. So let me just zoom in. So, and then I'll just draw it too. So across these touch points plus moving average, you can see one bounce, two bounce, and then the moving average, and then technically a third bounce right there too, but I wouldn't really regard that too much. But coincides with moving average, so you're looking at support at the 474 and some change for the time being. Now, in terms of resistance, and you could also consider support at roughly about the 473 and some change, but that's just based off of this and a little bit of this. But in terms of resistance to the upside, you'll see resistance at the 481 and some change, and then next level would be about 482 and some change. And then ultimately, I think we would be spiking up because, yeah, we could consolidate around the 485, but we would see a limit stop at 486 and some change. And this 486 coincides with this right about here. So going horizontally with this, with 1, 2, and I don't see a third touch point, so it might not hold. So we could get to the all-time high close to it, but that was pre-market, so that actually might hold. So the 487, I don't know if I said 486, 487 and some change. And then the all-time high, but again, this was pre-market, is about 488 and some change. So the 487 actually might hold. That is the resistance levels to the upside. But again, I think for the most part, because the market's short term, by short term, I mean like early part of the day tomorrow, will be a little bit of downside potentially. But then by the end of the day, going to the upside, and then more of the longer term, maybe closer to PCE or maybe even after PCE, it's showing downside potentially. So we're expected to come down. The only reason why potentially I'm saying that it's potential, and I'm not a professional, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling, is because if those inflation numbers come in better than expected, so inflation is lower, then it does not matter about the MAC lines, the market will just go up because it'll boost up confidence for the market that the Fed will cut interest rates. Now for the Dow Jones, and then another reason why I think it could be going to the downside, the VIX has been staying low for quite some time. If the VIX volatility index were to be spiking up, I would see an indication that we're going to see a potential, actually, oh, sorry, that is reversed. So technically, yeah, maybe we're still going to go to the upside because the VIX is staying low. Let me double check the VIX in terms of movement. So for the 1 month, 3 month, so I'm looking at the MAC lines showing indications. So it's still showing major drops still, and then 1 year and coming down still. So yeah, so the VIX is low, volatility index, and if it were to spike up, that would be indication, not always the case, but an indication that potentially we're going to be seeing the volatility spike up / potential pullback. And given how it's low and it's still indicating more of a drop, then maybe what's going to happen is coincidentally the PCE numbers are going to be good. Like we've seen the inflation numbers come by and they've been constantly either just barely increased and the market still takes it as a plus, or they've decreased and the market obviously takes that as a plus, and then we just end up going. So basically the MACD lines are going to be neglected. But either way, we'll just follow it for now for given the data that we see. And again, I'm going to give the up and down side in terms of support and resistance anyway, regardless. Now this is the Dow Jones, and this upward trend resistance line dates back since 2021, and this upward trend support level dates back since 2024, April of 2024. And if you think we were going to drop to it directly right off the bat, which I don't think is going to happen, but if we do, the level you're looking at is about 38,200 points, and then right now we're at 39,100 points, give or take. And then to the upside resistance, if you think we're going to go to it automatically, you're looking at roughly, give or take, about 40,240 points, give or take. Now, in terms of the movement right now, first level of support, if to the downside, it was based off the moving average. It's about 38,960 points. Then the next one's about 38,815 points, or 850 points. Yeah, 850 points, give or take. And then we'd basically be dropping down to the old support levels, which was about 38,400, 38,500 points, give or take. And then ultimately back down to the 30,200. Now, it's the upside resistance. We've seen resistance at the 39,600 points for the most part. And then after that, it would be pretty much getting capped at this level right about here. So we see 1, 2, and then potentially 3 touch points right about here. I didn't draw the line perfectly. Probably should have drew it a little bit better, but you're looking at pretty much resistance at the 39,900 points. And because it's close to 40,000, maybe it might spike up to 40,000, but I don't think so, because these times they could have obviously spiked up to the 40,000 clean, and they haven't, right? This one arguably did, actually. Let me see. Yeah, basically it did. But for these points, it didn't. So 39,900 points could hold us. But first, we have to pass about 39,600, 39,650 points, give or take, to the upside. But that's basically it for today's video. If you find it beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help out the channel, so thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And I do post these daily, so I highly encourage you to subscribe if you find it that's beneficial and you want to see these posts on the daily. Thanks again for awesome support. Appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.